Okay.
All right. Good morning. It's almost time to get started. It's 4 minutes after. So, feel like I haven't seen you guys in an age because of sickness, and I think I was here last Sunday. Was I here? Yeah, I was here last Sunday, but that was all a blur as well. So, I'm actually still clearing out. So, it's been really fun. And we had a really busy week on vacation. I know that you're not supposed to be busy on vacation, but that's not how we do things. So we were going to basketball games and hanging out with friends and just trying to manage the chaos of all that. So we're happy to be back in our own bed and hopefully back to something resembling normalcy. So why don't you guys catch me up? I think we're into 2 Kings now. I'm showing that you should have read chapter 2 and 3, even though I didn't tell you to do anything. We were on the road all day yesterday, so hopefully you looked over the text a little bit. But so 2 Kings 1, we've got after Ahab dies. Can you guys catch me up real quick on the events there, the happenings, and what stood out to you, what you remember? Nobody remembers anything?
So are you asking for chapter 2 then?
1. I'm sorry. I'm saying catch up. Chapter 1.
Okay.
Sorry. After Ahab dies, what happens in chapter 1 of 2 Kings? Did you guys cover chapter 1?
We barely got to the end of chapter 1. So
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha. All right.
We got through it probably in 5 minutes.
Okay.
We basically had the scenario of Elijah and having the kings, Ahaziah, however you say his name.
The right way to say it is Ahaziah.
There you go. Sure. And sending in 50 men, 50 men, 50 men. First 2 times, go up in fire. Third time, the leader basically says, wait.
Don't kill me.
Don't kill me. Right. So that's kind of where we left.
Good. All right, so the third captain of the guard pleads for mercy. Why does God want us to know about that story?
I think it's interesting that it was 3 times.
Mhm.
It's always a significant number, but then finally someone recognizes that God is in control, that he's in power. And that really stood out to me, that once someone recognizes that God is the one true God, then things seem to go a little better.
Right. When you read between the lines of every king that just perpetuates the sin of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, there was a lot of stuff that happened that we have no knowledge of. Lots of idolatry that happened. None of that is recorded for us, right? The thing that's recorded is he did really bad. Like, that's how much detail we get, right? So it's interesting that the details that we do get, we have to kind of ask, why did God stop and give us these details? Why did he tell us this story in detail? Why did he tell us that 50 men went up and approached Elijah and then were consumed with fire, right? So why is that detail? And I think what Mike is pointing out is that it seems like a lot of times the stories we have details of are when somebody is faithful, right? We know all about Elijah and Elisha. Why do we know about them and not all the Baal prophets and all the crazy stuff they did? Right? Because God is highlighting the faithfulness of servants amongst all of the unfaithfulness and idolatry, right? So, any other thoughts about this story about people being consumed and all of that?
Some of this helps build context for us and is perhaps some foreshadowing of events to come. And I mean, being consumed with fire isn't just brand new to Kings, right? We've
Right.
seen that before in other places, but with Elijah specifically, was it Mount Carmel where, they built the altars and he's dousing it with water, again, highlighting the redemption that is through God, right? And then we see this imagery again, and we see that fire can consume, but we also see that fire can, I'll say, give life in a way that it is God showing himself and his power through things, and that's the example for us to go, you are the one true living God, the Almighty, right? And so it speaks to his power,
Yeah.
and presence, right? So
And his favor.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, and then we're kind of going to continue to see that imagery,
Yes.
right, as we're moving on. So not that God is sitting there going, now, according to this, literature class I took, it's really good to foreshadow events, right? But he's also giving us specific things that he says this is important, because he typically goes, I repeated this several times. Probably ought to be listening up, right?
Right.
Wink, wink.
Yes.
So again, we kind of are seeing this story being told through fire, and it's kind of a tale of two stories.
Yeah. Yeah. It is interesting to see the elements of like a figurative literature here in a nonfiction accounts, right? So God builds in all of the reminders and the flashing lights, like the neon lights. Here, look at this, right? Be mindful of this. God builds that in his wisdom and power, and showing that who God's favor is on, right? He said, this is my son in whom I am well pleased, right? This is my beloved son. Here, he's kind of doing that with Elijah to show when you see these marks of power and judgment, the Lord is present. Okay? And here he's with Elijah. Yeah.
And just to build on your fire idea, fire purifies.
Yes.
And so we see that happening in this story and the next as well.
Right. Yes. Good. Alan?
One of the things that I really strongly felt over and over again is that Elijah's warning the king, are you saying there's no God? Because that's basically, well, there's going to be a consequence. And so here's the consequence, like 2 direct consequences. And then the third time, he goes directly to him, right? God says go directly to him, and there you go, consequence.
Yep.
So throughout this study, I keep on seeing that theme going over and over again. God's giving consequences or giving warnings to them, reminding them who he is. They got to pay attention to them.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, so maybe that's the thread too, that we're kind of following along. Like, oh, God's providence and God's just laying out his plan here, and constantly revealing himself, constantly showing himself to everyone around to show how powerful he is and that he is in control, right? And when he says you're going to die, that comes to pass. And that's, we end there with Ahaziah. Elijah tells him, so you're consulting messengers, or you've sent messengers to go ask Beelzebub about you. Why? Was there no prophet of God? Why aren't you asking God? Actually, because you've done this, you won't leave your bed, and you will certainly die. So he died according to the word of the Lord. Yeah.
So it's easy, I feel like, to just externalize this. Because even for Ahaziah, it's like, unless he'd been living under a rock, these weren't the first warnings.
Right.
Don't you know, the true God here? Did we not just see Ahab and all the messes that he had and the
Right.
problems and all these, this long line?
And Elijah's the altar with the surely
yeah.
that made its rounds,
The
right?
presence was made known, right? Prophets of Baal, slaughtered. Hey, God reigned supreme, right? So this isn't the first time that we have this warning. And so it's easy for us as the reader, it's like we know the person that's about to jump out to scare you in the movie, right? It's like, don't do that. They're right there. They're right around the corner. And then we fail to go, well, Cole, how many Bible studies did you partake in? How many Sundays did you sit here with these same warnings, and yet you didn't heed them?
Yeah.
So then I have to look at myself and go, there will come a time when the knee shall bow,
Yeah.
and it will be asked of me, didn't all these warnings, why didn't you pay attention to those?
Right.
Right? So that's kind of as a reader, it's easy to externalize this and go, you crazies, what are you doing? Didn't you just see all this? It's like, I've got to make sure that I'm asking that of myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of the Romans 1 idea. You're without excuse. God has been clearly revealed to you. Mike, did you have a comment?
I think because it happened 3 times, that's how we learn. You do it just once, it's easy to kind of just, not really believe. Happens the second time, you go all right. But we learn the hard way. We have to understand that once, twice, 3 times, all right, we need to do something about this and take action. But that's how we are in human nature.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. 1 time is a coincidence.
Yeah.
Or 1 time is an anomaly. 2 times is a coincidence. 3 times, and the 3rd time you're saved. That's providence.
Belief building.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. All right. Anything else from chapter 1? Okay. So 2 Kings 2. How would you summarize this chapter?
Elijah goes to heaven.
Good. Okay. Elijah's taken up, right? Good. Anybody want to add anything to that?
A peaceful transfer of power.
Peaceful transfer of power. Very good. No January 6th stuff going on here. Okay. All right. Good.
God's power is shown.
Yeah, God's power is shown again, right? So following that thread again, here's the power of God being displayed. Yeah, so that you are without excuse.
Once again, talking about the foreshadowing, but people struggle to accept that he's gone, and they want to go search for him.
Right.
Elisha's like, no, he's not there, but they keep pushing it. He's like, okay, fine, go. And then they come back, and he's like, told you so.
Right.
But
Yep.
they had to come to acceptance in their time.
Yes, yeah, yep, good. And how many days? 3 days, right? So we had 3 groups of 50. Here, there's 50 men again. Now he allows them to go 3 days, search, and they can't find him, right? So I think that this highlights, and there are several things, so keep your eyes open for Jesus, for the hints of Jesus in this, right? The little foreshadowings, like going and looking for a dead man, or a man who's not among the land of living for 3 days, right? Go look for him for 3 days, come back, you can't find him, right? He didn't come back, he didn't rise and walk anew, right, on earth, but there's just a little hint there. Okay? Again, we have a group of 3 here. 3 times Elijah tells Elisha to do something. Tell me about that.
He says, the Lord told me to go here, you need to stay here.
Good. And what's Elisha's response?
I'm going to follow you.
Yeah. Definitely going to follow you, right? So he says that in verse 1 and 2. Verse 3 and 4, again, says, I got to go here, you stay. And Elisha says no. Verse 5 and 6, same thing. So 3 times, God says, or Elijah says, I got to go here, Elisha, you stay. And Elisha refuses and continues with him. So what do you make from that?
Is it almost an opportunity for Elisha to deny
Okay.
and not proclaim his trust? Say, okay, I'll stay.
Right. Because, I mean, what's Elijah's history with the leadership? They try and hunt him down and kill him. So do you want to hang out with a guy that the kings are always trying to hunt down and kill? He never, like, he's always prophesying against the kings and saying you're going to die. You're doing evil. And here, Elisha, yeah, maybe this is his out, right? 3 times he's asked, are you going to be faithful and remain with me, right? Another little hint there. Yeah.
Elisha knows he's leaving. People come to him and tell him, and he's like, yeah, I know, be quiet.
Yeah,
Is
right.
Is he trying to soak up every last moment he can?
Right. Yep. Good.
To me, it kind of reminds me of Ruth and Naomi, that desire to be there with her, right?
Yes. Yeah.
He wants to be there.
Yep. Good. Yeah. So 3 tests of Elisha's faithfulness, and he remains faithful and stays with him. He said, and his response is, as surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you. Right? So kind of a bit of an oath here, a promise, a covenant.
Well, and I think too, that, now we don't see it play out like this in the story, but where, no, Christ, I won't deny you.
Right.
Right, so, similar situation there, it's a different outcome, but.
Just missing a charcoal fire, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Yep. Good. Yeah, again, I think these little, like Jesus he fasted for 40 days. So we got that with Elijah, right? He didn't eat for 40 days and curled up under a bush and was on the run. Now here, Elisha is being tested. So three tests, right? Just a little bit of foreshadowing of those things. Yeah, Jason.
Yeah, and then you see that continued on, right?
Yep.
Whenever Elijah Elijah asked, it says to Elijah, is like, hey, I'm gonna leave, is there anything that you want? And he said, please let there be a double portion of your spirit on me. And his response was, as long as you keep your eyes on me, if you see me the rest of the way, if you continue to follow me, then yeah, you'll have that.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's again, that like that testing or that like continuation, that, you know, the following until the end.
Yeah, discipleship, right? Like you see a little bit of that in this. Good. Yeah.
I also see a full circle of, God was in the whisper to
Yeah.
Elijah, and now
Three
he's
things.
and now he's in the whirlwind.
Mm.
So he's not only in the still small voice that we hear, but he can also be in the roaring whirlwind.
Yeah.
So it's just the gamut of God's power.
Yep. Good. Good. So they cross over the Jordan after Elijah takes his cloak and rolls it up and slaps the water, and the water divides and they cross on dry land. Does that sound familiar? Right? What does that bring to mind for you?
The Red Sea.
What?
The Red Sea.
The Red Sea, good. Yep.
Joshua and Israel.
Joshua, when they bring the ark and they start to walk into the Jordan, the water divides, they cross on dry land. Good. So, why this story? What are we supposed to see here? What is God trying to communicate?
He's letting Elisha know as well as everybody around him that he's with him,
Good. Yeah.
just as he was with the Israelites on the Red Sea.
Yeah. He's kind of linking and showing that this is the same God, right? The God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Aaron, Joshua. All of the same God is still with these men here, and when they need to cross on dry land, God makes it happen. Right? So linking, just a little subtle, maybe not so subtle, link between the God who delivered them out of Egypt to this God here that's protecting Elijah and Elisha.
So then, a little bit of a different link to this, but then I think this, you said earlier, this is my beloved son in whom I'm well pleased.
Yes.
It was the Jordan also where God was with Jesus now, as it's saying, hey, deliverance was once through a parting of this to get to the other side, right? Now we're showing also this baptism of water and having deliverance from sin through Jesus Christ, my son, and who I am well pleased.
Right, yeah. Yeah. Following it all the way through, right? The Jordan River obviously has a lot of significance with those things. So here you see another hint of that. Yeah, another foreshadowing. Good. Okay. Anything else to stand out to you so far?
So he'll continue that theme on as Elijah goes back.
Yep. So then, as they were walking along together, suddenly a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared, separated the two of them, and Elijah goes up to heaven in a whirlwind. Okay, what was Elisha's reaction?
Also my father.
Yeah. So you see the intimacy between Elijah and Elisha here. He calls out, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel. Right? So at this point, Elisha sees Elijah as a father figure. You see that Then what's his further reaction?
Which area is a horseman of Israel?
Okay,
Is that
yep.
what you're talking about?
What action does he take then?
He tears his garment in two,
Right, tears his garment in two.
which is something of note, that when Elijah takes that off, he's changing identities at that point. Like, he
Yeah.
doesn't need those earthly garments anymore, he leaves that behind,
Right, yes,
goes up.
yep. Good, yep. Yeah, Elisha picks up Elijah's cloak that had fallen from him. So, as Micah kind of pointed out there, here's, anytime there's a change in clothing, you have some identity crisis or identity event, right? So you see that in all kinds of literature. Here, God gives that to us as well and says, hey, Elisha is now taking off his garment and putting on Elijah's.
Reverse that.
Oh, did I say it the wrong way? Sorry. Yeah, Elisha picks up Elijah's cloak that had fallen and went back. And now he strikes the water to show that God has given him Elijah's spirit, right? Anything you want to highlight about that? Anything that stood out to you in that portion of the text? It's interesting, so trying to maybe see some hints of the Lord in this, this idea of taking the garment. They took the Lord's garment and they tore it to pieces, right? They didn't tear it into pieces, they cast lots for it. So kind of a little bit of foreshadowing there too, that the garment that was going to be used. So just kind of interesting, maybe coincidental, maybe also a little hint at the significance of that event.
So I thought it was interesting that Elisha asked for the double portion of power. Elijah said, if you see me, you will have it.
Yep.
He gets the cloak, he wears it, and then his testing of that power is a question of where is the Lord? And then that's when he touches the cloak in the water and it parts. So I just question, why was it a question and not a faith statement?
Okay.
And it
Yeah.
was more of a question, is the way I'm reading it is, do I really have this? Versus, I have seen and I believe, here is the God, right? So
Right.
that's kind of where I'm wondering why it's a question.
Gotcha. Yeah. Where now is the Lord, the God of Elijah? Yeah. And then he strikes the water and divides it, right? Yeah. Well, what do you guys think? Why the question? Why ask, where's the Lord? What do you guys think about that?
I wondered how close the other prophets were.
Okay.
That, because it doesn't tell us, it says they were a distance from them, but were they able to at least see Elisha coming back? And
Well, I mean, yeah, verse 15. The company of the prophets who were watching said, the spirit of Elijah is resting on Elisha.
did they see that?
So is this for them?
Yeah.
Yeah. For the witnesses.
The change of Elijah to Elisha.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. They went to meet him and bowed to the ground before him. Yeah, so,
Brad, I think
Yeah.
sometimes too, like we'll kind of get into this into the lesson today. But it's like, what are we putting our stock in ultimately? to be in our lives, right? It was like, well, if Elijah's gone, then the Lord is nowhere to be found.
Right.
It's like, not true.
Yeah.
Right? So it was almost kind of like sometimes, now we know there was like building blocks throughout all of this to set us up for New Testament time, but it's almost kind of like sometimes we put our faith in that thing that we can physically see and forget that God is still present. This doesn't mean God has abandoned me. This doesn't mean that God is just nowhere to be found and I'm now wandering aimlessly without him. Like Elijah or not, God still remains and is ever present. And so, but, just like in the New Testament, it's like, well, wait a minute, what about this earthly kingdom, right? What about this physical kingdom where we're going to reign and do all this, right? These physical things and these were ever present in their mind, and they were failing to connect the eternal piece of that. Going, it's not about this physical needing to be present for God to be present and to be here and to be throughout you and in you and through all things. And so, I don't know, that's where my mind kind of goes on
good.
that. And it's just like, then I kind of go like, how many moments do I have where I used to tell myself, oh, you little faith, right?
Right.
Where that physical thing happened or didn't happen, and my faith wavers, like, God, where were you on that?
Right.
Right? And I get so focused on that outcome that I forget to think that you weren't ready for this. This wasn't meant for you. I have a better plan for you. And so this is just a reiteration of me to trust in the plan when the physical doesn't make sense.
Right.
Trust in the plan that is above all.
Yeah. God's more interested in the process of purification and sanctification than he is in the outcome, right?
When Jesus ascended, he reassured his apostles and said, hey, I'm sending the Comforter to you.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure seeing him go, they were like, okay, what now? Like that moment of, what he was talking about, that moment of like, I'm alone. Am I alone? And just that need for reassurance. Like, where are you, Lord? Where are you, God? So,
Yeah. Good. Yeah, really good. So God's faithful, and he does that a lot where he says what's going to happen next to reassure you that he's in control. Jason?
Yeah, and on that note, it reminded me again of Elijah with all the prophets of Baal. And whenever he asked that question of them, it was kind of, he was antagonizing them. It was, where's your God? Has he relieved himself? Is he sleeping? Like, is he busy? Is he just not here? And so if I connect those two dots, it almost seems like, where is the Lord? And, where's the Lord, the God of Elijah? And then he reminds everyone, oh yeah, he's still here because he is constant.
Yeah.
He's always here.
Doesn't sleep or
You saw
slumber.
with Elijah, but it's not just Elijah. God is always here. Right?
Good. Excellent. Yeah. So then there are a couple of, displays of God's Spirit in Elisha. There's the healing of the water and the judgment against these boys mocking. So in this healing of the water, where the people say the well where the well is, the water's bad. It's the land is unproductive. What can you do? And he puts salt in a bowl, goes out to the spring and throws the salt into it, and says, "I have healed this water from the Lord. Never again will it cause death or make the land unproductive." And the water remained pure to this day, according to the word Elisha spoke. So, what stood out to you in that regard?
I had kind of just some trouble making sense of that, but when I tried to think of what it reminded me of, it just reminds me that we are to be the salt of the earth. And bring life, shine our lights to bring life on the earth, so I don't know if that's
Good, yeah.
any sort of link.
Yep, yep. Yeah, definitely when you hear that, you think of this story. Who had a comment?
She said what I was gonna say.
Yeah,
I think it's interesting that salt's added, because salt tends to be something that kills.
right,
Right? So it's almost providing the opposite of what you would normally anticipate. Kills the bacteria, kills everything that's there, so that there can be life, right?
right,
That's-
yeah.
He gives credit to the Lord too, for this, right?
Yeah,
Salt preserves.
Yep.
yeah, salt preserves, yeah. 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 Yeah, and usually if you pour a bunch of salt on the grass,
It's
the
like-
grass is not going to thrive, right? But here, you see God's power is at work, because you can do the opposite, and if God said to do that, it will actually have the opposite effect, right? Okay, so what about these boys come out? What happens there at the end of chapter 2 with Elisha? Somebody tell that story real quick.
Dick jeering him, you baldy, baldy. So he's, I know. Well, I was thinking of me during that time, right? But
This is Cole's favorite story so far.
I should now mention I have 2 pet bears.
she bears.
Okay, so was Elisha justified in doing this? Why do we have this story? What do you think?
I feel like it's another example of maybe culturally an unlikely figure, God showing great things in an unlikely way.
Yeah. Good. So other than calling him Baldy, what do they tell him to do?
Go on.
Go up. What's that mean? Why would they say go up?
I took it as get out of here.
Okay,
And typically going up meant that you had to travel up to the highlands,
right?
which is where the godly people are supposed to go, right?
Okay. But something just happened.
They just saw Elijah go up. And
Right.
so
Right.
They're just saying,
Yeah.
the same thing. Why don't you go up with your man?
Yeah.
We don't-
Right.
Yeah.
We don't want you here.
Right. So I think that maybe that to me makes sense. Like, hey, Baldy, why don't you go up with your buddy? Because we don't want you around here, right? And this idea of, it says that these, some boys came out. But that word is kind of not very specific, because Absalom was considered a boy. There were 400 Amalekite warriors that it uses this same term. They were young men. So it might not be like a group of, adolescents that are teasing him, but rather young men, like 20-year-old young men that were saying, hey, get out of here. We don't want you. Why don't you go up with your buddy, right? Go up. Get out of here, Baldy.
I think, Brett, I think the idea here is, I don't know what it means for go up.
Yeah.
You're right, they are. But the fact is, they were mocking God.
Yes.
And God is not gonna put up with that. This is my man, just like he said about Jesus. This is my son, who I'm well pleased. This is my man, don't mock him.
Yeah. So the other thing about that, to connect it to Jesus, so if Elisha has a double portion of Elijah's spirit, and when he sees people mocking him, he judges them. What does Jesus do when he's given the whole, not a double portion, but every measure of God's spirit? He says, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. Right? So to me, I think fully justified to bring down judgment on these young men. 42 of them, 6 sevens, right? But Jesus is merciful, right? So again, I think this is something that we look at, we go, wow, we all deserve this kind of judgment. We all deserve the wrath of God. But Jesus actually goes even further and gives mercy and grace and says, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. Just,
I think the Van Nuys is fire.
okay, yeah, right?
And he uses this as an example. Follow my people.
Yeah.
Be with me. Don't do this. Don't be mocking. It's showing his power and showing his almighty greatness.
Good. All right, so we'll cover chapter 3 and the war with Moab, and we'll go forward from there on Wednesday.